Hi everyone, my name is Chloe Edwards of Voices for Virginia's Children. I work on our campaign for a trauma-informed Virginia and with trauma-informed community networks across the state of Virginia. In my conversations with those leaders in response to the resurfaced trauma, the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as the pandemic as a trauma, we knew it was important to do something in response as a community. And that's what birthed Racial Truth and Reconciliation Week, which is built to acknowledge racial truth, promote reconciliation and justice in action-oriented steps. Today, I'm pleased to introduce you to Our Ancestors' Wildest Dreams, which is a series of Racial Truth and Reconciliation Week. And this series is intended to bridge gaps between generations and acknowledgement of the plight and the triumphs of the older generation, but also in acknowledging the leadership roles that young adults and youth are playing today to build a Virginia for everyone, an equitable and just one. I'm gonna go ahead and give the mic to Joanne Moore, CEO of Taking Back Our Youth.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, my name is Joanne Moore. I'm Executive Director of Taking Back Our Youth, which is an organization that I started in 2016 after the death of 4 of my friends due to gun violence. I'm a student at Old Dominion University, and I'm currently a Cities United Fellow. And so next is going to be Iget Ndelale in introducing herself.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. My name is Iget, and I am a first-generation honor college student at Village Mesa University. I'm studying psychology with a concentration in cognitive and behavior neuroscience. I'm also the founder and CEO of Safe Haven, which is a nonprofit organization that helps refugee and immigrant students have access to mental health programs and services. You can also follow us on our page. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and we have a website. So you can just type in safehaven_VA. Next, I would like to introduce you to Adele McClure, who is a member of the Virginia Legislative Bloc Caucus.
Hi, so my name is Adele McClure, and I'm actually the Executive Director of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to the members that we have here with us today. We have VLBC Black Caucus Chairman, Delegate Lamont Bagby. We have VLBC Vice Chair Senator McClellan. We have Delegate Marcia Sia Price, and we have VLBC Chaplain Josh Cole. And now I want to give each of the members a chance to tell us about one historical piece of legislation that they have worked on or something they've accomplished that has contributed to history. And so I'm going to start with Chairman Lamont Bagby.
Thank you so much. I have a couple pieces of legislation that I'm really proud of. One is the commission that advises the governor, that established the commission that advises the governor moving forward on issues that impact communities of color and those that are living at or below the poverty line. And so I'm really pleased about that commission and the work that they've been doing, especially as we went through a very tough year as it relates to trying to address so many things related to race in the Commonwealth and the impact of the inequities on not only our schools, but our communities, our housing, food deserts. We addressed so many different issues in this past session. I think if you had all of the members of the Black Caucus on the call, we will be here for quite some time talking about the victories from this past session. The other thing that I'm really like, the bill I'm most proud about, had the most pride about all of my bills since I've been serving, is a bill that cracked down on predatory lending, because that had been something that we have been trying to do for so many years, and it made it so that those predatory lenders that had come into the Commonwealth and were charging interest rates anywhere from 300 to 400% are now all capped. And so They are now closing their doors. You'll see the red and ugly yellow and ugly aqua green buildings starting to close. Title lenders starting to close. And that will help many families. And it comes down to one thing that I think is very important, and that's breaking cycles of poverty and creating generational wealth. And those types of things prevent the underlying issues that hold us back.
Thank you, Chairman Bagby. Next, Vice Chair Senator McClellan.
So that's a hard one. We had 25 years of pent up work. That this year was the first time we were in the majority again. And so I had 49 bills alone, 36 of which became law in some form. But one I want to talk about that didn't get a lot of attention was because of a personal connection, probably meant the most to me, was the Domestic Worker Bill of Rights. Every woman on my mother's side of the family, except for a sister who was a home care worker, and she who eventually became a college counselor, was a domestic worker. And in Virginia and in most of the South, domestic workers are excluded from worker protections that every other worker has: unemployment compensation, minimum wage, workers' comp, and anti-discrimination laws. And so working with Delegate Price had a piece of this bill in the House that also became law. We got rid of the exemption for minimum wage, and then we put together a working group that will begin next week to look at how to extend other protections to domestic workers. We have about 60,000 in Virginia who are predominantly women and women of color, but thinking about all of the women in the Dido family, my mom's maiden name. I did that for them as well as for those 60,000 women in Virginia. So I think that's the one that meant the most to me.
Thank you, Senator McClellan. Next, Delegate Marcia Price.
It's really a great honor to be here with you. And I'll say most of the ones that I'm most proud of came from ideas from people that I worked with that were younger than me. And so it's really important that you guys speak up about your lived experience, because that's where a lot of decision making can happen with your input. And one of that, I didn't need anybody to tell me about it, but I did get some more information. But it was the first student loan reform bill that we had, and it was to create the student loan advocate. So if anybody on here is familiar with student loans, you know that the loan servicer is out to make money. So when you have questions about what you should do for your own situation, you're probably going to get an answer that helps them make more money. And that's not what we wanted. We wanted a place where people could go get information about their own situation, their own loans that was best for their lived situation, but also trying to get them to financial security. I understood that when I got to Spelman College, an out-of-state private institution, that I was going to need loans. And I did not understand what all of the words meant when I signed on the dotted line. And there's another component of that, and that is education about how loans work and which loans are better and not. And so we're proud of that. We are in need to beef it up, because that advocacy office has been I guess they just need a few more people to answer the calls from the many Virginians that have student loans. And so I'm very proud of that work. And then we're continuing to build on that. This year, I worked with Delegate Simon to get a borrower's bill of rights. So every other type of loans had a bill of rights for the consumer, for those people receiving the loan, except for student loans. But now we do as of July 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Price. Now, Delegate Joshua Cole.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This session was my first session in the General Assembly. So I am one of the junior members on the call, and I was really excited to get to work. And one of the things we did was implement an automatic voter registration that went into effect on July 1st. So anytime you go to the DMV to update your driver's license information or any information at the DMV, typically they ask you a question if you want to register to vote. We switched that around, and it's now a question, do you want to opt out? So now anytime you go to the DMV to update your information, you're going to be automatically registered to vote. And this idea came from many students as we were going around registering students at the University of Mary Washington or Germanna Community College. Some would say, I don't have time to register, I got to run the class. So I said, oh, okay, well, we're gonna make sure you're automatically registered and then you won't have an excuse, because we wanna make sure that we as young people understand our power. And with all the roadblocks that come in with attempting to register or getting to registered, sometimes for those of us in the community, we have other things going on. We may not have time to register. So we wanted to take that excuse out the way. That went into effect on July 1st. And so anytime you go to the DMV, you're gonna be automatically registered to vote.
Thank you, Delegate Cole. Now I'll pass the mic back over to Joanne.
All right, so we're going to move into the Q&A portion of this session. We have questions that you have submitted in advance and questions that members of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus will also ask our youth. So my first question is going to be to Senator McClellan, and she's also a candidate for governor for Virginia. What does it mean to be a senator or a delegate in a country where your ancestors were once enslaved?
That's such an excellent question that I often find myself reflecting on, especially sitting in the Capitol. It's a combination of sadness, frustration, and pride. I'm sad when I think about how many of my ancestors, I don't even know their names or where they were born, because when they were born, no one deemed them important enough to write that down on a piece of paper. I'm saddened thinking about what they went through. And I think about, you always hear the arc of the moral universe is long and bends towards justice. So the fact that I sit in the building that was the capital of the Confederacy, where many laws were passed 400 years ago, beginning that enslaved, and then even after slavery ended, oppressed my people. And to know that I sit in that building passing laws to undo 400 years of injustice gives me an extraordinary amount of pride. But it makes me sad that I can't even say many of their names as I stand on their shoulders and invoke their memory.
And did anybody have any follow-up questions they wanted to ask, Senator?
Yeah. My question is, when you sit in the Capitol and you just pass on all those laws and bills, like, I just feel like, to me, it would make me upset, because I just feel like you can try to undo all the years of things that have happened, but do you ever sit and think can I actually do it?
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. Sometimes I get overwhelmed. I mean, especially right now, I just think about how much work there is to do, and I just think it's overwhelming. But every little bit of progress is a victory, and so I celebrate every bit of progress and then use it to fuel me to keep going, so that my children don't have to fight the same fights that everyone else in my every other generation of my family has had to fight. So great question.
All right, thank you, Senator, and thank you, Ms. Gardley. I believe I said your last name right. And I'm going to turn the floor back to Eget.
Thank you, Joanne. The next question will be directed to Senator Lucas. You're the first woman and Black person in your position. Can you tell us a little bit more about, this historical moment?
Senator Lucas is not on with us.
See, okay, we can move on.
Let's go ahead and ask Delegate Cole a question. Delegate Cole, how are you changing the landscape for youth involvement in public policy?
Thanks for that, Chloe. I'm just trying to make sure. I think I'm the youngest legislator on the call. And one of the things that I really believe is bringing people to the table. Senator McClellan, Senator Price, Delegate Bagby, they have all led before me and done the same thing. Delegate Price right now is encouraging students to push for being included in the stimulus package if they're 17 years old. And so we have to make sure that we are bringing people to the table. And think about this. we are not supposed to be here. We are not supposed to be in the General Assembly. We are not supposed to be advocating for how we feel or what we believe in. And so I believe it was a former congressman who said, if there is no chair for you at the table, you do all that you can to bring a folding chair, you make your space there. And so for young people, I want to make sure that your voices are heard, that you are seen, because in the next couple of years, many of you will be the next elected officials. Many of you will be the city council leaders. And so we want to make sure that you're at the table now, because some of you are leading right now. And in 5 years, some of you will be in these positions. And so we want to make sure that we are leveling the playing field and that we're opening doors and ushering you in. And so I'm trying my best. We have online town halls, we have accessibility. I maintain all of my social media pages from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and people contact me all the time with questions, with ideas for legislation, and to see how they can make change in their communities. So my biggest thing is making sure that people have a seat at the table and that they're being heard.
Thank you, Delegate Cole. Does anyone have any comments or questions for him?
Yes, I do. This is Megan Truman. I have a quick question for you, Delegate Cole. I work with over 1,700 young people a year, and many of them are very excited and eager to get involved. What tangible next steps would you recommend they take to get involved in their community or within the movement so that they feel like their voices are heard?
Absolutely. The way I got started, depending on the age of the students, back in 2005, I was a page for the General Assembly. If you're between the ages of 13 or 15 before the start of session, you can get hired to come and work for the General Assembly. And that's where I got my start. You can reach out and contact your legislator, whether it's your state senator or your state delegate, and say, hey, I want to get involved. Can I see how campaigning works? Can I be a intern in your district office or on your Richmond office, or even some of your local elected officials, like your city councils, city council members, or your board of supervisors members? Reach out and say, hey, I want to get involved. And then we're now starting to see so many young people who are becoming advocates, whether it's against police brutality, whether it's against minimum wage, whatever have you. You can organize, you can mobilize, and get people in your community now together to lift up your voices. And I'll tell you, when I was growing up, they would tell me, you can be anything, shoot for the stars, da, 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 da. But as soon as we started mobilizing, as soon as we started lifting our voices, they would say, ho, 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 wait a minute, it's not your time yet. But don't let anybody stop you. Go ahead, organize, mobilize, do what you can, and lift up your voices. Try to find ways to get involved by contacting your local elected officials, your state elected officials, and just say, hey, I want to get hands-on experience. How can I help you out?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Thank you, Megan, for that wonderful question. I'd like to pass the mic to Michael.
Please make sure you take yourself off mute.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Edwards. My question is for Lamont Bagby. What advice do you have for youth who may be interested in getting involved in advocacy, activism, or have aspirations for running for public office one day? What challenges did you have as a person of color?
My main thing is find the issues before you look for the role. I came in as a former teacher and former educator, and then decided to run for school board because I wasn't satisfied with the environment in which the quality of education in the facilities in the school district of Henrico. And then, you know, I would also say do your research on individuals that you see already perceive as leaders and have a conversation with them. Those individuals, we meet with individuals all the time. I run into Senator McClellan at the coffee shop all the time. She's meeting with someone and I'm meeting with someone, and we would be happy to meet with one or two of you just to have a casual conversation. Adele is there sometimes. And just to have a casual conversation. And that's the way you learn about opportunities that may present themselves. And I would just also say, research who you're following. Because sometimes it's a good person you're following, and sometimes that person may be leading you in the wrong direction. but you're smart enough to make those decisions. But be bold. Be bold in asking the questions. And then also what I tell individuals all the time, don't just focus on the elected positions. We're in committee meetings all the time. And the only Black individuals in the room are the elected ones. Mm. No Black reporters, no Black lobbyists, no Black staff, no Black lobbyists, no Black lobbyists. That is an opportunity. And oftentimes I tell you, no Black advocates. You have advocates that are working on Black issues, but they aren't Black. So individuals of color have a real opportunity as corporate America, advocacy groups, our offices, the governor's administration, folks on the ground, all try to diversify their staff. And so I say be bold, ask the questions early so you can be prepared for the opportunities. Another place that we often have an opportunity, but a hard time finding individuals interested is campaigns. And so go volunteer for the first one. It'll be quick. You'll run through that campaign, and then the next campaign, folks will say, oh yeah, I remember Lamont, who worked for Jennifer McClellan for her gubernatorial campaign. You might want to consider hiring him to work on your, or being your campaign manager for your school board campaign. And then it all goes like a snowball. So I would say just be engaged, ask questions, and be bold.
Thank you so much, Chairman Lamont. Does anyone have anything to add to that?
Yes, I have a question. So I know it's already hard enough for me being an African-American female in the world because so much is already expected out of me, but how do you stay positive being an African-American male and knowing that a lot of people are already gunning for your head because of the color of your skin?
The beautiful thing is, and Senator McClellan touched on it already, our ancestors prayed for this moment. We are destined to be prepared for this moment. We're also excited to pass it on to the next generation and to prepare the next generation. Don't worry about who's against you. Find those individuals that are for you. Build a camaraderie with those individuals. Find out where the networks are. See who you can trust and build on that. Focus on the positive. And those people that are empowered, like the senators and the delegates, and individuals that are already seated, will have your back. Don't worry about those individuals that mean you no good and mean harm for you. Focus on the positive, because they will be there. But then you also have people to process that with to overcome it. We see it all the time. Someone applies for a job, calls me and say, hey, look, they didn't consider me. They didn't even give me an interview. And then we do a little research and we find out why. Just be positive. Know that this is your moment. This is our moment. And keep going.
I'll pass the mic to Ava, who has the question. Ava, could you first introduce everyone to your work with Ballerinas of Change and how that was founded?
Yes, so Ballerinas of Change was founded when me and one of my dancers that I work with, Kennedy George, took the photo at the Robert E. Lee statue. And then we formed a group of African-American dancers from our dance studio, and we're working on a program that's looking to fund people that wouldn't be able to pay for dance expenses. So it's a scholarship fund for those who have a passion for dance that wouldn't be able to be in it otherwise. And our main goal is to help diversify dance. And yeah, that's the goal for the long run project. Since then, we have written a book my mom, and she did a bunch of different things in the book. It just, it's about a girl who overcomes racism pretty much, and a journey of a young African American girl that, it's a brown ballerina because you don't see those often. So it's basically a children's book to help students find someone that look like them and not just see the classical white dancer. So yeah, it's pretty much how everything was founded and what we've done since then. The name of the book is My Ancestors' Wildest Dreams, and here's the cover.
Awesome. And it'll also be featured as a children's book read during Racial Truth and Reconciliation Week. And so it's Ava in our Art and Activism art case. All right, and we have a question for Delegate Marcia Price. Could you share a gem with us on how you've overcome hard times in the past and how youth can overcome some of the challenges that we face today? So the hard times you've overcome, I've heard you speak before about becoming an elected official as a Black woman, but then we're all facing the trauma of police brutality amongst others. Could you share a piece of advice for us?
Yes, I think, yeah, so challenges are every day, and I think this is the hardest year I've ever had. First of all, I'm an extrovert, so I appreciate the opportunity to connect with folks right now. But I think one of the biggest challenges of once I got elected and I got to the room that Senator McClellan was talking about was this sense of invisibility where you're coming off the high of a campaign. Like, I literally just got elected to office. I know that I have thoughts, ideas, and passion, and I have this big vision of everything that I'm gonna do to help change the world to make it better for my community. I represent an area where I was born and raised. I'm fourth generation Newport News. And that's when reality just smacked me when I got into this room that you can see behind me. And it was like, oh, wait, guys, hey, I'm over here, like, tag me in, coach. Like, it was like I was supposed to sit in the back and just be quiet. And I was like, but no, like, there are 83,000 people in Newport News and Hampton, Virginia, that need me to be everything but quiet. And so let me tell you how I was raised. And so I'm Black, I am young-ish, so for that room that I'm in, I was young. And then I'm also from Newport News, who, you know, in Richmond and other places in the state, we get a bad rap. And so there were some assumptions being made about who I was because where I was from. And I was also very progressive and maybe in a philosophy minority. So I had all of these reasons why people thought that I should be quiet. But the other funny part is, I mean, I don't know if you know about Newport News, but it's like one of the things that you will learn is you got to speak up. Like, if you want something, you got to fight for it, you got to scrap for it, or somebody else will get it. So I was basically raised this whole time with, like, raise your voice, use your voice, get what you need, fight for your people. So I guess, 30 years of training, I get to Richmond, I'm gonna do the same, I'm gonna be the same. So when anyone tried to sideline me or tried to silence me, the thing that I found very helpful in overcoming that was my preparation. I studied everything and I continue to study everything so hard. I read everything. I ask all of the questions. I meet with people so that I know various points of view, so that when I get the mic, I am undeniable. Like, if you don't answer my question, it's because you chose not to, and I got you on camera. So now I'm gonna ask you in a different way. Why are you not doing things that help Black people? Or why are you choosing to water this down when we needed this to, we don't have time to play games. So it's kind of like, all right, I'm not gonna let you play games with my job and what I'm here to do. So I think it is unfortunate that Black people have to be twice as prepared, because it's not fair to sit and watch some of my colleagues never read anything and have power. But if this is the situation I'm in, I'm gonna rock it and I'm gonna do it, right? So bringing that sense of Black excellence, that sense of what we were born to do, to every single room that I'm in as delegate, So if you ignore me, it's because you chose to, not because I didn't speak up. So I think that's one area of it. The other part, I'm still kind of living this obstacle because I can't really talk about how to overcome it yet because we're in the moment. But I'll tell you this, as it pertains to fighting against police brutality, in 2017, where I was still kind of new to this, I was invited to give a speech at a police graduation. And literally, I'm a preacher as well, so it was a little preachy, but it was, I think, to the point, right? It was, if you're gonna have a gun and come police my neighborhoods, can you be excellent as well? I'm just asking you to be your best. Don't be racist, don't racially profile, don't mess with people, like really be a public servant in your position. Please and thank you. Congratulations on your, graduation. I stepped down from the stage and it is like I have set off a world war and like talked about their mamas and talked about, you would have thought I said, at that point, you would have thought I said defund the police. And all I was asking for was like, don't be, the bad side. So the assistant chief at that time walked up on me, got in my face, pointed his finger. And in that moment, I just smiled because I knew you are acting like the very thing I just asked y'all not to be. Mm-hmm. So I'm making sure everybody can see this. Just don't be him. That's what I was saying in the speech, right? And I was in the paper. There are people that still won't talk to me. And now we're in this moment because of young people like y'all, where I'm like, see, I could have been that, but I was trying to be nice. So now it's like, now you got to answer to even more because y'all done turned up the heat. And y'all like, nah, we're not asking y'all to be nice. We asking y'all to do the right thing. We're asking y'all to be excellent. We're asking you to be like 400 hours for training. No, we're asking for 1,000 or let us do it, right? So we're in this moment. So we're still trying to figure out how to overcome police brutality. But within that, the confidence that you all have to speak up for the issues that you're facing, don't ever change that. Push harder because your ability to create pressure is how we can co-create. So when you see Chairman Bagby or Vice Chair McClellan or Chaplain Cole, we get to go into special sessions like, all right, let's do this because they know we got y'all in our back. And so as you have your own leadership positions, create that village that create that pressure for you to walk in with that, but also be prepared so that they can't deny your request.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much for speaking on that. I would like to pass the mic to Chloe. If any of you guys have any questions, you guys can go ahead and ask.
You being a Black female, which most of us are, how do you feel about like just police brutality in general? Because myself, I get scared because I think about it like this. Yes, I'm a female, but I'm also Black. And that basically is like a red flag to police, like, oh, I'm dangerous or I'm this or I'm that because I'm Black. So I just wonder how do you like stay calm and confident, because I know a lot of people have a lot of issues with you because of your color and you're also being Black or a female, and everyone thinks that females are supposed to stay at home and cook and clean and have kids. So it's just like, how do you have the confidence to be who you are and be okay with everything they're still saying about you?
So you're gonna make me take some of this to my therapist, but let me first start by saying mental health professionals are saving the world right now. But no, really, like, so you asked a very complex question that I will try to do it justice. But I just had my 40th birthday, and I am just now at a position where my family has agreed to stop asking me about when these milestones are going to occur in my life that are nowhere near my plan. So you just got to make sure that even if somebody else has expectations for what your life should look like, be very clear in your plan and articulate your plan and say, that's awesome if you believe in, you know, the established patriarchy that you were taught, but I have freedom and I'm going to make my own choices, right? And just be true to who you are despite what their expectations are. And I just say, like, continue to show up in your genuine self, and you will make them reckon with you, so they either don't deal with you or they will start to accept you. Whatever their decision is, I'm fine, just so I get to sleep well at night. But this idea, you're right, like the audacity of me to show up and sit at the front of a room and not be afraid to ask questions that they would rather that I not, so that they can stay silent on issues that we're dealing with. There's also an expectation that I'm angry. There's an expectation that, you know, whatever, just like if I come looking cute, I must not have read the night before to be prepared. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna show you I can do both. And, you know, so it's just constantly being myself and breaking down their pre-established norms that they thought of women, and just being a different version of that. Some people think I'm way too masculine. Some people think I'm way too feminine. And I'm like, I don't care. Can you answer my question, right? So it's really about focusing on the work, being myself, and really having the confidence. But I'll tell you, that preparation that I talked about is where I draw my confidence from. I know what I'm talking about because I did the work. And then some of these other expectations within police brutality, the data shows that you are well-founded in your fear. Now, cable news networks may not be showing all of the names of the Black women who have died at the hands of police, but the list is longer than just Breonna Taylor. And when you realize, like, oh wait, we dying too, like, oh, okay. Oh, am I gonna be as outspoken, you know? And there's this pause. But what I know is that if I can be a child playing in the park and be killed, then why not just go full out and be me and speak up, because the danger is there. If I could be asleep on my sofa and die at the hands of police, then I have to go. I have to go full out 100, because if I'm at risk either way, then let it not be in vain, and let it not be while I'm being silent about the things that we are experiencing. At the same time, I think I can't be silent because these experiences that you talk about, you know, when people try to say, oh, it's just bad apples, it's not the system, then what do I say to little girls who might be younger than you that are afraid of people that they've never met? It's not just bad apples, it is systems that empower bad apples to be in charge, to run the culture. And so if I'm silent, I also don't bring your fear to the table, and it becomes a myth as opposed to a lived experience. So I can't turn back. I also carried a gun bill this year, and I received threats. My home address was published in a very menacing way. When I say this has been a hard year for those of us that are in these squares, it has. But then I look at people like the legacy of John Lewis and those that have gone before us, and I'm like, yo, they literally beat us and they literally turned dogs on us. I damn sure can sit behind a screen and go on a Zoom and go off. Or I can definitely write a letter in and get my voice across on public comment. I can go out to a protest, make sure I'm staying safe, but I can go out to a protest. Like, I just feel like too many Black women were killed and beaten before me for me not to continue to fight.
Thank you, that was powerful. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge how powerful this scene is, where we have these two generations, and here young people are seeing who they can become and seeing the challenges that the older generation has overcome on our behalf. But then we're also giving a moment to acknowledge all the great work and how this younger generation is kind of serving as the foundation for what we look like, what Virginia looks like, what America looks like in the future. And so we have a little more time than I thought we'd have. So I want to give our elected officials opportunities to ask the young adults and the youth here questions as well. So I'll pass the mic to them.
Thank you so much. This is Delegate Lamont Bagby, and I just had as you all think about all the pieces of legislation that you may have heard about, that we will be addressing that are focused on criminal justice reform and policing in the Commonwealth. Anything stick out to you all that you all are just really hoping that we can get accomplished, or any law that you all think that we really need to get accomplished?
For me, it's really like everyone having equal rights, like, and what was it? Oh, it was like the package for like 17-year-olds and stuff. It was the stimulus package.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the CARES Act, and we're still waiting to see what becomes of the HEROES Act and how that will help Virginia from a funding perspective. I have to say, for me, there's just so many historical, and I'll send everyone a link to the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus's policy agenda. But there's so many just historical pieces of legislation that Virginia could possibly adopt from a language perspective, declaring racism as a public health crisis. And California, for example, has declared trauma as a public health crisis. What would it mean to acknowledge the trauma that comes from racism as a public health crisis? The voting rights piece of legislation was powerful. We see how Virginia voting has impacted the makeup of our legislature. It's also pieces like the Marcus Alert. Virginia has lost a life to police brutality, and how can we correct that as a Commonwealth? I do think this brings up another idea of how we can communicate these complex pieces of legislation to youth as a younger demographic who may not understand all of the makings of policy and how it works, but thinking of ways that we can make sure we're communicating policy at the grassroots level to everyone who needs to hear it and understand it.
I would like to give input. I'm Sophia. For me, I have several things. I would like to see more support with mental health services, because I think as we talk about first responders, we always think about nurses. We always think about nurses, doctors, people who respond to crisis and things like that, as far as from a health perspective. But I feel like that the forgotten first responders are the social workers and the mental health counselors. They're on the front lines right now as well. And I know even after this pandemic, I think there's going to be a huge influx for that need. And I think we're not talking about that right now, just because we're just living in the moment and trying to stay above water with this pandemic and the movement with racial injustice and things like that. So I would love to see that. And just, I know that young people right now we are really creating our own spaces at the table, because I think sometimes as young people, our thoughts and ideas and voices are often dismissed because we don't have a lot of experience. And so just having how can we make our voices not only us coming to the table, but that same seat is being valued as the other person that's sitting at the table already that has the power. So I would like to see more of that. And then also just having these hard conversations about what's going on in government and in all these other spaces, because racism is deeply embedded in everything that we're doing right now. And I find myself sometimes having conversations with people and they kind of steer away from it because it makes them uncomfortable, or they don't think that it's happening. And it is happening, and just having like encouraging people to like really sit down at the table and, you know, raise awareness about these issues, even if they're not really thinking about it. Because I see people like releasing statements and things like that, but I feel like it has to go much deeper than that, like from a like foundational perspective, and having those conversations first before, you know, us making like more change and moving forward.
And I couldn't agree with you more. Racism shows its ugly head in every corner of the Commonwealth and in just about every issue that we deal with. And for far too long, we have allowed individuals to say, "Oh, you bring up race too often." But the fact of it, the matter is, it exists, and so we have to speak to it. And so we are. I'm so glad that we are at the point, and so many of our allies are at the point, that no matter how uncomfortable it makes other people, this is our moment to address it in housing, in education, in every single thing that we are charged to do in the General Assembly. How we appropriate funding to businesses, how we support businesses, everything that we do, healthcare, mental health, everything that we do, we have an opportunity to address this systematic oppression that has weighed down on us for far too long. So thank you for that comment.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in and say that we absolutely are working on the public health aspects of racism. Mm-hmm. And I think just as a womanist and Black feminist coming to the table, there is now a Black feminist who is the chair of the Behavioral Health Subcommittee. And let me tell you that my being in that position, all I hear is, wow, the conversation is really different this year. Because when somebody says something and I'm like, I wonder how if we look at that, it's intersectionally, like I wonder how racism and classism and also sexism play a role in that. And it's like crickets, because all they were thinking about it was from their perspective. And I'm thinking like the little Black girl that I know that was going through the same thing, that didn't have the same access to resources. It's not just that easy. So how do we make this globally available? And people did not like having to think more comprehensively, but you still keep pressing. And so I think as we are talking about money for mental health, we're also talking about more of us in those positions so that we can already show up knowing some of the stuff that other people have to train for. I didn't have to train how to be anti-racist. Like, I'm gonna let them read that book. I'm showing up ready for the work, right? So I think that, but the other part is like how we even understand trauma. Like the trauma that kids in 23607 are going through is something way more than I don't think any of us that are older would have ever imagined that children would be going through these things. And so I know, Senator McClellan brings that into, when she's speaking about the children enrichment, it's like, we are bringing new ways of defining words to the conversation. And that is foundational. And then on top of that, I mean, what you have given me and just hearing you is just, not only how do I have a youth town hall, but how do I make sure what I'm hearing at the youth town hall is valued in the same way as what the lobbyist is saying? And let me tell you, it's the presence of someone that values it the same at the leadership. And that's where I think, as Delegate Bagby was saying, we need more of us in those positions.
I think adding on to what you were saying, speaking of youth, for me, one thing that I'm really passionate about is dismantling the school to prison pipeline, especially knowing that the Commonwealth ranks among one of the top 5 states in the nation to referring to students to law enforcement instead of looking at alternative ways to work with our youth. And I know there have been a couple bills that have been proposed in terms of what discipline can look like, but I'm just wondering what insight can you guys bring us, because I'm still learning in terms of like what progress is being made to ensure that our youth aren't being criminalized and getting records at such a young age, and then they have more barriers to overcome as they get older, and they gain more insight and knowledge into like how to better handle like maybe that anger and that trauma that you were speaking to, Delegate Marcia.
Yeah, I'll take that. We did make a lot of progress this year, passing 2 bills. One that got rid of the crime of disorderly conduct for students who were charged with misdemeanors for things like singing rap songs on buses and kicking trash cans. And then we put more discretion in the hands of principals on certain behavior incidents, you know, that they used to have to refer to law enforcement. Now they can handle that through the school discipline process. But the bigger issue, touching on intersectionality, that we have a lot more work to do is recognizing that too often it's not just Black and brown kids who are disproportionately impacted. It is students with intellectual developmental disabilities and mental health issues. And then when you intersect the two, it's even worse. And so part of it is just making sure that we are recognizing 1 in 5 kids has, whether it's autism, ADHD, trauma, you name it, 1 in 5 kids has some issue in that bucket that affects their behavior, that first shows up in the way they act. And rather than asking the question, what's underneath the behavior, too often we say, well, we need to punish them and criminalize them, put them out of school, or put them in jail. And the first step is changing the mindset to just ask, hey, what's going on here? And rather than focusing on how do we harden the school, how do we police the school, asking ourselves, how do we deal with underlying issues? You know, over 50% of the students want to do self-harm. That's the #1 threat in our schools, not a school shooter. So we should be focusing on mental health professionals, social workers, not SROs and police. And that's where we still have a lot of work to do. But the progress we have made because people have shown up and told their stories. Until I could stand in front of a committee and say a 6th grader in Henrico was charged with a misdemeanor for singing a rap song on a bus. You know, a 6-year-old in Lynchburg was charged with a misdemeanor for kicking a trash can. Until I could tell those stories, or even better yet, those students and their parents told the stories, we didn't make progress. So you have to speak up because your experiences are different from everybody else in that building. But the laws we pass are affecting you, not just now, but for years to come, and your children. So we're gonna do our part to make sure we are reaching out to you. But whether we reach out to you or not, show up. Email, call, reach out, and we'll have a partnership to help each other do that. But we cannot be a government by, of, and for the people if you're not participating in how that government is shaped.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marquetta. I have a question. As we know, the COVID has exposed a lot of things that needs to be changed, reevaluated. And as a former IEP student, one of the major concerns about either doing school virtually or going back to school is how those kids will be addressed and how they can continue to improve even despite all this. So are there plans for the future to create some initiatives to help in case of things like this again? Because this has exposed that homeschooling is a privilege not everybody can do. So when it comes to IEPs and of those types of organizations and placements, are y'all coming up with more ways to help in the future?
So the short answer is yes, but again, this is an area where we need to hear the firsthand accounts of why in-person learning is important. You would be surprised how few legislators actually have children in the public schools right now, or ever, and let alone those who have students with IEPs. So we need to take it out of the theoretical and into the real by hearing your story. So sharing here is how virtual will impact me, my students, my family members in plain English, will help us to push through to say, we've got to deal with this, because right now the loudest voices are either the parents who say, I just need my kids to go to school so I can go to work, teachers who are worried about being safe, and those are important voices. But I can tell you, special education voices are not being heard right now. So we need you to help amplify them.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, everyone. We are running out of time, and I want to respect everyone's time. So we'll go ahead and switch into closing. I'll give our elected officials, before we switch into closing, an opportunity to make a last remark that they'd like to leave our attendees with.
So I'll start. I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to be on the call and not only listen to us, but also give us some feedback and give us your perspective on things. It's valuable. Continue to reach out to your elected officials. Find out, if you don't know who they are, find out who they are. I can tell you they're anxious to hear from you, that we're all anxious to hear from youthful voices, other than my son. I can send him to his senator, McClellan. But we are all anxious to hear from you all. It's valuable, and your voice needs to be heard. And before you know it, you will be on the other side of this thing, and you will be the ones in some form of leadership, whether that's a principal of a school, running a nonprofit, running a business, elected official, lobbyist, or a reporter. You will be those individuals that will be shaping the future, and the future will be brighter for the next generation because of you.
I just want to say thank you. We learn from you every day. I have my son will be 10 next week. My daughter will be 5. I learn from them every day. I learn from my niece and nephew who are in their 20s every day. So we need to hear from you, and we want to hear from you. We're putting our contact information in the chat, and not just for special session, but for 2021 and beyond. Reach out to us and let us know how we can bring you in, how we can help you. We talked a lot about policy, but we also help with people who have problems with state agencies. So even if it's, you can't get anybody to pick up the phone at DMV, reach out to us. We helped with that too. We represent you, and we want to be sure that we are talking to you and hearing from you and listening to you more than just right now. This is the beginning of that dialogue. So just stay in touch with us. And unfortunately, I got to jump off because I'm late for another call, but just thank you all for being with us today.
I think definitely thank you for the opportunity to share and learn. Just even the way that you ask your questions informs us of the different types of ways that you're thinking about some very complex issues and how it impacts your life. And so just congratulations on being already at the table. We just got to get y'all at more tables, so more, more people can hear about what you're doing and thinking and saying. And I think that's where we can help. But just never stop telling your story. Your story is valid, your information is valid, your viewpoint is valid, your emotions are valid, and you don't have to chunk that out. You can come to the table as a whole person, and it is valid. It is supposed to be there. You belong there, and just make sure you're prepared, make sure you've done the work. And I cannot wait to see how you guys can take what we're doing even further to the next level.
Again, I think I just want to echo the sentiments of my wonderful colleagues. Thank you for allowing us to do this. I want to share something with you, and this is not to pump their heads up, but in 2016, I was working for the Senate of Virginia. I was just a little staffer running around the Capitol. That was Delegate Price's first session. Delegate Bagby had been there for a while, Senator Jennifer McClellan, they were all in the House. And I never thought that 4 years later, I would get to work side by side with them changing policy and changing things in Virginia. And these are people who I've looked up to for years. I don't know if they know this or not, but I've watched Delegate Price and Delegate LaSharice Aird as they would walk around the Capitol in 2016, fighting to make change. I've watched Delegate Bagby as he had been there for years, trying to fight to make change. And now I get to sit beside them on committees and I get to help fight. And that's going to be you all in about 2, 5, 6 years, that the people that you're looking on this call right now, you'll get to sit beside us in committee. Or maybe you'll help us write our policy, or maybe you'll lobby us to help get things pushed forward. Whenever people tell you that we can't do it, Ayanna Pressley, who's a congresswoman from Massachusetts, said those who are closest to the pain need to be closest to the power. So if you're hurting, find a way to get in the door. If you're upset, find a way to get in the door. If you feel like no one is listening to you, you knock the door down and make sure your elected officials hear from you. And so I'm excited because we're living in a time now that I didn't think I would live to see. I didn't think that we'd have an opportunity where young people would lead the conversations, that young people would shift policy from criminal justice reform to environmental protection to gun prevention violence. Young people have been leading. And I'm excited to be a young person leading, to be a young person with you all leading, and to see how you all are going to shift and make change. Don't let anybody tell you that it's not your time. Don't let anybody tell you to hold up, wait a minute. Don't let anybody tell you that you don't have the opportunity. This is now. This is our moment. This is our opportunity. Keep leading, keep doing what you're doing, and you can do all things. So I appreciate you all. And thank you so much.
Let me just jump in right quick. I know we're ending the call, but let me just jump in right quick because Delegate Cole did a wonderful job mentioning Delegate Price, Senator McClellan, and myself. But I just want to make sure each of you all know, and one of you may need to hear this right now. Delegate Cole skipped over 2017. He ran in 2017 and lost. But perseverance is what you all need to hear. Sometimes you lose, sometimes you get knocked down, but get back up again. Don't quit. Everything won't go your way, but don't quit, and you'll be just like Delegate Cole and be able to have an opportunity, just like he's having right now, to influence and bring about change.
Thank you. I wish Zoom had snaps and claps that we could do outside. They have the claps, but not the snaps. We'll get some of that soon. But thank you. Those are some powerful messages. Thank you for leaving that for our youth and young adults on the call. I'm going to go ahead and give the mic to Igat, who will begin our closing remarks.
Yeah. As a Black immigrant and refugee that has, the great passion for mental health awareness, just to see myself in space where other students like me are often not represented gives me a piece of hope. The role that each of you play in the state level impact the everyday experience of other immigrant and refugees like me. And there's a lot of growth that we need to make as a state and a country as a whole to improve the experience of minorities. But what each of you do now will and does make a difference. So I just want to say thank you so much. And I'll pass it to Joanne.
As a student at Old Dominion University, majoring in political science with a minor in mass communications, I'm invested in improving equitable access to wealth and opportunity because its influence has ignited a cycle of community gun violence. As a result, I have lost many loved ones close to my heart. As each of you prepare for special session, I know that we are rooting for you and are grateful for the conditions you strive to improve on behalf of all of us. We hope that you remember our faces and hope that this gives you great comfort to know that you'll all embody what we both are and hope to become in the future.
Thank you. And as an advocate in the child welfare space and a kinship foster care alum myself, the policies that each of you have contributed have greatly shaped the outcome of my life thus far in its trajectory. I am pleased that the youth in the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus were able to participate in this event, as its obstacles each of you have highlighted today do not just show the plight of oppression, but also the cultural resilience that contributes to triumph. As a graduate of the Sorensen Institute for Political Leadership's Emerging Leaders program, I sat in a room where slave holders once sat. I interviewed Senator Dance for my scholarship to the Sorensen Institute, and she said, I'm gonna let you sit in my seat because I see that you're becoming. Seeing what I can become is powerful for these youth, for me, to be represented in spaces that you are in gives us access to a piece of the American dream that was once denied to our ancestors. Thank you for joining us today, and I'm gonna pass the mic to Delegate Lamont Bagby to close out, or the Executive Director, Adele McClure.
All right, I'll take us to the closeout. That was a really, really inspiring conversation, especially in light of the passing of civil rights giants C.T. Vivian and one of my personal heroes, Congressman John Lewis. And Congressman Lewis often talked about the power of youth and the importance of youth engagement in society, politics, and social justice. And he got involved in the civil rights movement in his youth. So, he successfully took on systems of oppression and hate at a very young age. And the power of youth should definitely not be underestimated. So every great moment of change in our country has come about in part because of youth getting involved, because of them getting active, what you've heard on this call, in the struggle for a better tomorrow. So we now stand at another important point in our history where we all need to continue the fight for our ancestors, continue their fight and honor our ancestors in that way to make this a better world for us all, and for those who come after us. So conversations like this are a great piece of that effort.
Thank you, Adele, and thank you everyone for again joining us on this Zoom. It was lovely to see your faces, to hear your voices, and again, we will remember, and we hope once all this COVID is over and we're back to some sort of normalcy and the Capitol's back open, you all will come and visit us at the General Assembly, and we'll be able to have these conversations face to face. But until then, be blessed. God loves you, and so do we.
Thank you everyone for joining us for Racial Truth and Reconciliation Virginia's launch week. You can follow facebook.com/racialtruth or vakids.org. We'll go ahead and shoot everyone an email that participated in this conversation so we can keep in touch, and we'll also keep you updated on the week. Thank you so much.